Shalom, and welcome to a message for the Parsha for Parshat Vayigash. In this week's Parsha, finally, Yosef reveals his true identity to his brothers, and understandably, his brothers are all ashamed. They're actually in shock. And imagine standing face to face with the person that you did so much wrong to, the person you sold into slavery, person who lost so many years of his life. A total of 22 years he lost being with his family and his beloved father. Very, very, very traumatic. Very dramatic. And what do we see? Yosef is the one who initiates the forgiving process. Yosef is the one who tells them, please, va'atem al te'atzvu, you do not be upset. Because this is not something that you did on your own. This is not something that happened only because of your, evil intent. Rather, this is something which was orchestrated by Hashem. All of this came about because Hashem wanted it to be, and he wanted it to be, as we see now, it's quite evident that he wanted me to end up here and become the ruler of Egypt, so I can be the one to help you, help my father, help the entire family, sustain you all, and provide for you all a good life. So Yosef is the one who is encouraging them. Rather than them begging him for forgiveness, it says that they couldn't say a word. They became like mute. They were so in shock. They were so bewildered. And Yosef is the one who is encouraging them. Yosef is the one who not is begging them for forgiveness, is encouraging them and telling them how much he forgives them and how much he bears no grudge against them. There's something very interesting. If you look in chapter 80 in the book of Psalms, over there, the psalmist, which is King David, prays to God, and he says, Ro'ei Yisrael ha'azina, the shepherd of Israel, listen to my prayers. Nohek Katzon Yosef, the one who leads like sheep, Joseph. Who's he talking about? Well, he's still talking about the Jewish people, the entirety of the Jewish people. And yet, what does he refer to us? Not only as Israel, but as Yosef, as Joseph. That means collectively we're also all called Joseph. Not only are we all called always as usual. Normally we're referred to as either Israel or the children of Jacob in the Torah many times, but here we're specifically called the Yosefs, the people of Yosef. How did we become the people of Yosef? How are we exactly the people of Yosef? We aren't Yosef. Yosef is just but one tribe in the Jewish people, which later, in next week's Parsha, will split into two. But that's about it. That's only a certain percentage of the Jewish population, not all of the entirety of the Jewish population. So how come we're called Yosef? And there are several answers to this, several explanations. The first one obviously being the fact that Yosef was the one who sustained us. And it's only due to his graciousness and his leadership that we all survived. We survived the famine and later became established as a nation in Egypt, from where we left and became the nation of Israel. But moreover, and more importantly, it's the fact that we all possess, all, meaning all, we all as Jews possess in our DNA, in our genetic makeup, we all have this quality of Joseph, which is the quality, the ability of forgiveness. The idea of not bearing a grudge against someone or people who have wronged us. It's very interesting. Although this does not mean that one forgets necessarily entirely what happened to them, we do have to remember the past. We do need to be students of history. If you forget history, you deny history, then you're doomed to suffer and, to repeat it and to suffer those consequences. That's true. We have to take the lessons and to try to always take the necessary steps to avoid the mistakes and to avoid the calamities of the past as much as is humanly possible, as much as within our reach. But to remain and to harbor to remain with and to harbor a grudge, that is not a way of the Jewish people. Of course, let's not make a mistake and say, oh, you just forgive. No, in order for somebody to receive my forgiveness, my pardon, if a person are wronged me, that person has to have true and absolute remorse. And we do see it in this week's Parsha and last week's Parsha, where if you recall, Yosef was pushing their buttons. Why was he pushing their buttons? Why was he trying to get them enraged? He wasn't there, God forbid, to get back at them, to take revenge, to let out, his vendetta against them. Not at all. He was actually doing it for their favor. He wanted to see, he wanted to discern with certainty that they are indeed fully and absolutely remorseful for what they did. And once he determined that, once he reached a point where he saw how much, for example, Yehuda and his brothers were ready to fight, they were ready to fight to the death to save their brother Benjamin, the exact opposite of what they did to him, that's the moment that he revealed his identity to them, and he offered, unilaterally, he offered to them full and absolute pardon, full and absolute forgiveness. So we see this. Think of the Jewish people. Think of the terrible, terrible calamities we've been through in our history. Think of all the countries who have wronged us. Think about where Jews live today, where Jews flourish, where Jews not only live in a small autonomous group, separate from society. No, Jews contribute to their society. Think of Jews living, let's say, for example, in the United Kingdom. Do you know that England expelled us twice in history? And even the times that they allowed us to live in the country, going back hundreds of years ago, there was rampant anti-Semitism. There was obviously a discrimination against the Jews in general, and religious Jews in particular. Let's go to Spain. Go to Germany, Nazi Germany. Jews live in Germany today. Communities are flourishing. Jews don't have this in their DNA, this idea of bearing a grudge, of being angry at society. Even in these United States of America, they weren't necessarily always so kind to us. There was discrimination. There was, especially during World War II, when they clearly knew, even if the masses didn't know, but certainly the State Department and the higher echelons of government, the what they call the intelligence, they knew very well about the atrocities that are taking place in Europe. They knew of the genocide, and yet they turned a blind eye as long as they were able to. Do we as Americans, as Jews living in America, do we say, no, we hate this country? No, we're not going to help the society because look what they did to us not that long ago? Absolutely not. That's not the way of a Jew. The way of a Jew is to be kind, to be forgiving, to be giving, and even to that very same hand that slapped you, to try to pat that hand when you see that person has true remorse. May Hashem help that we never have to come to this. But if, God forbid, we have a person or two that wronged us, that did bad to us, we need to find it within ourselves to forgive them and to allow them that chance of coming back from it, of return. Shabbat Shalom.